Who told you? Who told you? Who told you? Who told you? You what? God designed, God designed.
Good evening. What's going on, board buddies? You know what time it is. It's 7 o'clock on the dot, and you know what time it is. You know what we do about this time. Welcome to the BOERBOEL Show, where we discuss the BOERBOEL. If you love dogs, this the place to be. If you're thinking about a BOERBOEL, if you're thinking about dogs, if you have a BOERBOEL, we got so much information. This is where we share with the community a form of unity. Everything that we trying to do for the breed, everybody is welcome. We encourage you to join as long as you can maintain respect. We got a super exciting episode today, y'all. We bringing in some special people. We trying to give you this much information as we possibly can. I'm your host, of course, Jordan Pittman, and I can't nobody without you. Bring it to the stage. Very special guest. My co-host. He's not even a guest. My co-host, Jason Gibson with Savage Kingdom. Hey, one of the biggest, hottest, fastest in the BOERBOEL business. What's going on, family? How you doing this afternoon?
Brother, blessing. How you doing today?
Man, I'm excited. I'm up in a new spot today. It's a little hot, but you know, I'm in here and I'm doing the best that I can. I'm excited because guess what? I made it another week.
You made it another week.
I'm still here, family.
Man, you did more than another. Make it another. Man, I be wanting to break your news for you. I be wanting to break your news for you, bro.
Go ahead, family. Go ahead. Let them know. I can't.
It's not often that you get to shake hands with the mayor and they invite you to a special grand opening with NFL stars, man. It's not often that happens, man. It's not often that happens.
Oh, man, yeah. You know, I had to show my support for the community. You know, it's investing in the neighborhood, and we want to encourage that. You know, it's a form of giving back. It's empowering the people. It's giving people jobs. It's building and support the community. And it was a pleasure. I was honored to be a part with Deshaun Watson opening up his restaurant here today. Yeah, so you know we had to bring Balto out to represent. That was huge, but you know it's just a part of. I feel like I'm obligated, and was able to get some more eyes on the breed. You know, every time we go out, hey, Balto, he brings the crowd. So it was awesome, man. It was,
Man, that's what, man, like I say, man, ain't everybody just shaking hands with the mayor and the mayor loving on your dog and say, come jump in on this with me. that says so much, brother. Congratulations to you, man. And man, this stuff be so big to me, man. I love it. I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it. So congratulations, keep doing your thing. Paving this path, man.
Hey, and I always feel like old hound, man, I'm gonna steady keep on pressing. It's just like I want to do more. I feel like I could do more and I'm gonna learn more. I was just reading some text here before the show to make sure that we can make it valuable and informative. And it's about giving it our all, because guess what? These dogs, man, they do so much for me. They do so much for us. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing. And we gotta make sure that they are honored and treated with the utmost respect. It means a lot to me. So I feel like I owe down. And if you like me, and if somebody they got to pay. And so I owe. When I owe, I pay. Yeah. Man, how was your week though, big bro? I'm trying to get like you, man.
Busy. I had another puppy go home today. My only male out this Barack and Daisy litter. So the timing just didn't work out. Mr. Hawthorne picked up his puppy, man. I wanted it to try to go down at the same time because it would have fit perfect for our show that we have today of picking up your BOERBOEL puppy 8 to 12 weeks old and what to expect. So it would have fit in. I wish we could have timed it out a little bit better. but I'll have some video and footage for everybody. But man, Puppy's going home and trying to relax, trying to get ready for the next batch, and man, just trying to work behind the scenes with you for this show that we put on for people. Looking forward to Thursdays.
Oh
That's my
yeah.
highlight. Looking forward to today.
Listen, board buddies, every single week we are doing things behind the scenes to make this more informative, more interesting, more entertaining. So it is valuable. This is the #1 place for everything encompassing the BOERBOEL. We're going to make sure that we bring in on interesting guests. Today we got very special guest dog trainer coming on today from Miracle K9 Training. As always, we got Jason Gibson from Savage Kingdom, the power player in the BOERBOEL community, a fixture in the BOERBOEL community. He's here to offer you his insight from a business perspective and all things that considered. You know, I'm here to give you the best that I have and give you my all. We are definitely working tirelessly, effortless, behind the scenes to do more, to give you more than anywhere else on the net. Yes. This is the place to be.
Yeah, we spend countless hours talking about our upcoming shows. I know we freestyle a little bit when we get here, but we plan it out. We talk. We try to make sure we have the most up-to-date information, like Jordan said, that you can't get anyplace else. Try to be good ambassadors for the breeds and try to make things easier for you guys. We try to make sure that we can give you anything that you can to help your kennel be better, to help you make a purchase of a puppy, not from us or just between us, but from anybody out there, so you can do the best for yourself and for the breed. So that's what we're here for. We're going to discuss it every Thursday, good, bad, or ugly.
The good, bad, and the ugly, and everyone is welcome. Yes. Everyone is welcome. You don't have to agree with us. You don't have to have personal like us. You know, but you can even be an adversary. You're welcome to come on, post your opinions. We want to get very various opinions. We want to get different perspectives, because one thing that's for sure, this is about the BOERBOEL. So personal feelings aside, maintain respect. You can come on and voice your opinions. We was lucky enough to have the chairman for SABS. I couldn't believe that, man. Did you see that, bro?
Man, so you're sitting with the chairman of SABS. You're the head of the board.
That's like the president of the AKC. I couldn't believe it.
So he was a fan of your show, huh? He's a fan of BOERBOEL Breakdown and Discussion.
I was blown back. I was like, chairman. I was like, wow. I knew he was heavy though. I've seen quite a bit of his dogs, his research.
But you heavy, bro. You're heavy.
we do this thing together. It's BOERBOEL family around here,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And again, invaluable. So this is a good place. Yep. So you're talking with the chairman. You're talking about some genetics. You're talking about some standards. That's some stuff you had going on. And if you didn't watch it, Jordan does a few shows throughout the week besides BOERBOEL Breakdown and Discussion. You got to stay tuned to his pages. You got to stay. You can catch a live 3 out of 7 days of the week, 4 out of 7 days of the week. You can catch a live, and you're going to get some good stuff.
And we're going to even we got more shows that we planning on bringing in and getting more people involved, because this is community based. This is not a promo show. This is about the breed. So we're going to be bringing in some different segments to keep it more informative, to give you perspectives. We want to cover everything from the tails to the toenails. You know what I'm saying? From the toes to the nose. Everything about a BOERBOEL. We don't want to miss. No fur is going to be uncovered. You understand? We going from the toes to the nose. We're going to cover the BOERBOEL from the day that he's born to the day that it passed away. And we're going to help you with your business, if that's what you need help with, with your training, behavioring, breeding, the day-to-day ownership. You can learn about it here. And a lot of this stuff applies across breeds, right? So we reaching across breeds because it's a dog at the end of the day.
Yes. And that leads us in today's discussion, puppies. When you're picking up your puppies, most breeders send them home somewhere around 7.5 weeks to 9 weeks old. So this week we're going to discuss bringing home your little BOERBOEL, or as I should say, your gigantic BOERBOEL, and what to expect for those first 4 weeks that you have. So from 8 weeks to 12 weeks, some of your do's and don'ts, some things you might need to have on hand for you, and how to get the best quality for your puppy, and what some situations you might run into that you need to know when you're just bringing your puppy home.
Yeah, and it's a very important time when you're talking about 8 to 12 weeks, because it's called the critical period for socialization. And this is where, it's a good time to imprint.
I got some 7.5-week-olds. I'm gonna go grab one real quick, Jay, while you talk.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Let's see what you got, man. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is like a good time to build these relationships, with your puppy. You want to be prepared when you bring in your dog home. You give you some ideas of things to be conscious of. This is what this show is going to be about. At the age of 8 to 12 weeks is an ideal opportunity for you to do things like potty training. The BOERBOEL is a very intelligent breed. You can start to build up these routines. You can start to do these things with your dog that will last all the way into adulthood, believe it or not. Come on. Oh my. Oh man. What?
7-week-old female.
Man, stop.
So this is one of the things you can expect.
Man, stop playing. Just 7 weeks on. That's man.
It'll be 8 weeks old this Saturday. So almost it's 7.5. Come on, girl. You gonna cooperate with us? I just want everybody to see. I'm gonna put her back up and bring her back. Puppy breath. Love it the most.
They never want to cooperate. It's never easy with Oh man, I love to see that though, man. Look at that health though. Look at the health on that puppy. Okay, so listen, ladies and gentlemen, I could only go so far with the training. And I'm not an expert master trainer, but we do have a master. We're going to bring him in. He's from Miracle Canine. He's here, and we're going to admire this young puppy. But this is the type of information that you can use.
Look at that tail wagging.
Look at that tail. Look at that tail. But in order to make the most of your relationship, training is essential. And I can only take it so far. I want to, like we said, we want to give you alternative perspectives. Bring it to the stage. I'll let him tell you more about himself. David Turpak from Miracle Canine Training. Welcome to the show, man. Thank you for joining us.
What's happening? How are you guys?
All right.
Pleasure meeting you, sir. Pleasure meeting you.
You as well.
Yes,
How you guys doing?
Outstanding. How about yourself?
Not too shabby.
Do better, bro. I live for this time. Right. I was trying to take a nap. I can't even sleep because my adrenaline is like, hey, let's do this. Like my board buddies, I gotta get ready. So I started doing. I'm excited, man. I can't be better. How about you, though?
I'm doing good, man. Busy day of training. Hanging out at the shop, just getting back, and ready to talk some dogs with you guys.
Okay, yeah. So listen, I had a couple questions. One of the first things that I like to do initially with the training is non-verbal communication, establishing focus.
Sure.
What's your thoughts? So, first of all, though, introduce yourself. Tell us about your business and how long you've been doing this. Your area of expertise. What is your philosophy? So let's talk a little bit about you for a second.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is David Turpak. I own Miracle Canine Training up here in the Cleveland area. We are a training facility specializing in kind of behavioral rehabilitation. We work with a lot of dogs with aggression issues, anxiety issues, things like that. But we also do a ton of stuff with puppies, getting the dogs started off right. It's cool that you got the BOERBOEL thing going because we love working with the power breeds. Obviously, we see quite a few BOERBOELs up there ourselves, and they're fun dogs, and they're definitely dogs that need training early, So that's what we've been doing. I've been training for about 11 years now. And we made a pretty good name for ourselves up here in the Cleveland area. And, like I said, happy to share some knowledge with you guys.
Right. So, bro, this is my bro, Jason Gibson. He's with Savage Kingdom BOERBOELs. He's a fellow breeder.
Sure.
But this is our first time, and we still haven't met face to face.
Yeah.
I've seen much of your content online, bro. I don't know if you've seen it, but this guy's got some great experience with dogs in general.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about you.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay. Yeah. Sure. All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. No, like I said, I've been doing it for a while. We work with a lot of dogs up here, and it's fun. It's a passion of ours. So like I said, we love doing what we do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, seeing you're the expert that we have on board today,
Yeah.
we're kind of novice in the training.
Sure.
Just first quick question for you. Ideal time to start training a puppy?
Yeah, training starts immediately. And it's funny, you were just mentioning a second ago about how, you like to get started with like kind of the nonverbal side of things, which, I would say contrary to popular belief, I totally agree with you. So much of training has less to do with, teaching your obedience commands and your sit down and stay and stuff. And it's more teaching a young dog how to learn, right? So teaching them the concepts of yes, teaching them the concepts of no, setting your boundaries, establishing good routines, establishing good structure, stuff like that. And just getting the dog into a good state of mind. Because I'm sure you guys both know plenty of people who have dogs that are not trained from the standpoint of, off leash and, super strict heel all the time and holding reliable downstays and all those types of things, but they're really well-mannered dogs. And
Right.
I think it's important to highlight that obedience doesn't make a well-trained dog. A dog that understands what's expected of them makes a good dog. Whether that's obedience or not. So training starts right away, getting those routines and stuff established.
I had to grab my pen so I can take notes while you're talking.
Oh yeah. You
Get
definitely,
my pen.
if y'all haven't already, grab
more,
your
so get my pen so I can.
There you go.
Yeah, grab your
mind
pen
me.
and paper, everyone. Grab your pen and paper. Get
Yes.
ready to take some notes because this is going to be very informative. David is a master trainer. He travels on. You were just in Chicago. I saw on your podcast about family with dogs that was going back and forth and stuff.
Yeah. 4 Rottweilers out in the Chicago area that were getting into fights with each other. So the clients sent 2 of them up to us for a board and train, and then I actually traveled out there to work with the whole pack. So we travel a lot. I'll be actually up in Toronto here in about 4 or 5 weeks, teaching a seminar up there and stuff as well. So we do a little bit of traveling and stuff as well.
Yeah, so get your pens and pen and papers because we got to cover some great topics. The training is essential. Understanding your dog's behavior. Like me personally, as being a breeder, this is just not my area of expertise.
Sure.
But I do have to have a fundamental understanding of dog training, dog behavior, in order to effectively manage a pack of dogs. You often see me out with 6, 7 dogs, running them through the streets in the neighborhood off leash, but that's due to my strong foundation and understanding of pack behavior, managing a pack, leading a pack, and guiding them. We're not just aimlessly wandering. We're on a mission. And I'm leading and I'm taking charge with the pack, and that's how I'm able to effectively manage it. And a lot of it, here we go. We got somebody. But a lot of it has to do with just working with the dogs. Understanding and loving with the dogs and having this harmony within, having this harmony.
Yeah.
So when my clients come to pick up puppies,
sure.
And again, I'm gonna have you help critique me a little bit and help me get better. One of the things I start with early, and the thing I try to pound into their heads in the hour and a half they're here when they're first receiving their savage, is I try to pound into them socialization.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'm telling them is socialization is key. Training is paramount, but socialization is a key factor. So if you can tell us, is one putting the apple before the horse, or what?
Sure.
How does that combine together with socialization and training?
Well, so I would say socialization is an absolutely necessary initial stage, but I would ask you the question of when you say go home and socialize your dog, you pound that into them. What do you mean by that?
Well, especially, so I start them off here with myself and with my kids, and I'm talking about the family members, and also, so I'm not telling them to go to dog parks or anything, but when you go to the vet, make sure the vet's getting some hands on, make sure it's seeing stuff. And I mean, socialization, I also, in my brain, I include in there the environment too.
Okay, there we go. That's the word I was kind of looking for.
I don't know how to say it right, but socialization and getting familiar with the environment.
Yes. So
Such
the way
as not lawnmowers, but vacuums,
Sure.
loud noises,
Yes.
objects, and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so socialization, I always say, breaks up into 3 categories, right? So you have socialization of dogs, socialization with people, and socialization with environments, right? And I think commonly, the reason why I asked you the question of what do you mean by socialization is because a lot of your average owner, when you tell them go socialize your dog, what's the first thing to do? The first thing they do is they go to the pet store, they go to the park, they have everybody coming up to the dog, petting the dog, they're meeting every dog that they see out on the walk, you know, because they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to socialize the dog and get the dog meeting a lot of different types of people and dogs. But what winds up happening is that kind of shoots you in the foot because the most important part of socialization is getting the dog neutral to things going on around them, right? So when I get young dogs or, you know, my personal dogs or clients' dogs or any of those types of things, the first thing that we emphasize to them is get this dog everywhere, but don't have things constantly coming up to them, right? Focus on the environmental side of things first and get the dog to a place where, same deal, like you just said, if a person comes running by or going by on a skateboard or a lawnmower goes off or a car backfires or something like that, that they realize none of those things directly impact them. They're just things happening in the environment that, you know, it happens. Oh, it's over there, but it's not causing me any sort of pain. It's not causing me any sort of stress or anything like that. And, you know, dad's got my back. He's not going to let anything scary happen. And then as you're working through the environmental side of things and you're getting the dog really neutral to stuff, simultaneously in smaller bursts, you do the socialization with the people or with the dogs. But generally speaking, you want to make sure you're setting the environment up for success with those types of things, right? So not having people constantly invading in their space and stuff, but allowing the dog to freely go explore people or explore dogs when they're off leash, where if they get a little bit nervous, they can create some space and not have that person constantly pushing back in on them, stuff like that, right? There's a lot of components that go into good socialization, but I think the most overlooked one is the environmental side of things and just getting the dog neutral to what's happening around them.
Okay. I would like to add, I believe it's important to sensory socialize. So get the sound involved with it. I guess that's environmental.
Yep.
But sounds, the nose, exposing the dogs. You know, if you often see the dogs, a lot of what they're doing is sniffing the ground, sniffing the air, throwing that nose or backing around here to and fro, hearing the different sounds of the wind beneath their leaves, you know, birds chirping, cars backfiring, the garbage truck. Getting the dog familiar with the unfamiliar. That's a big part of it for me, because I think it's good that I'm glad that you mentioned it in the way that you did, because I think people a lot of times confuse human socialization with the way the dog socializes. It's totally different.
100%. Yeah. No, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah. So before we go any further, let me also another featuring guest is that we have often on the show is Nate Johnson. He's a fellow breeder. He's got some insight. Like I said, this is a community-based show where everyone is welcome.
Yeah, this is cool.
Nate,
specialist with the different colors and the varieties of the boerboels, and he's isolating the black and tan genetics.
Yeah,
he just produced a bomb litter, so he's gonna have some questions and stuff.
Yeah,
because we all trying to learn at the same time.
AKA the geneticist. That's what we call him around here, the geneticist. Nate, the geneticist.
I try. I'm learning every day, right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yes,
but nice to meet you. I didn't catch your name. I was running a little late, so
that's all right. I'm David. It's nice to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So, what do you have any advice in terms of feeding? What do you think about?
And we're looking at 8 to 12 weeks old. That's the show today. When you're bringing that puppy home, and what Jordan is saying, when first food you're introducing to him at home, if you're trying to switch it from what the breeder initially had the puppy on, how do you switch over to a new food?
Yeah. I think at that age, given the fact that you're going through kind of the potty training stages of things and you're probably getting that dog out, you know, every hour or, you know, maybe, you know, give or take, obviously. I think if you want to switch your food up right off the rip, you know, you kind of deal with some of the side effects of some diarrhea and stuff like that, but you're taking the dog out enough where they should be able to rebound fine from it. But that's more of I would say the nutrition side of things is a little bit less up my alley. So you guys might have better insight into that kind of stuff. The biggest thing is, if you're going to change it, I wouldn't be putting them on anything like drastically like worse in quality, obviously. But as long as you're, if you've fed all of your dogs freaking, whatever from, special diet or something like that, and you really want to keep this puppy on it, and you want to switch them over to it, as long as it's a high quality food, I don't think that's an issue.
How you feel about hand feeding?
Yeah, good question. I think that it's important, but I don't think it's as important as everybody makes it. So I think when you can do it, I think it's a great idea, but I also think that there's some value out of teaching good manners out of eating out of a bowl. So generally what I try to do, like with my young dogs, is when I first bring them into the house, I'll usually do kind of like a 50-50 approach where either, every other day I feed their meals out of hand in training sessions. And then the, opposite day, obviously I feed them out of a bowl, or I'll do, one meal out of a bowl, one meal out of hand, as I'm starting to develop some engagement and stuff. I think it's less about if you're feeding them out of a bowl and out of a hand, and more that you just have appropriate amounts that you're feeding and appropriate routines. I find commonly with young dogs, people jump right to just overfeeding the shit out of them, and it's like young dogs, like if anybody, you guys obviously as breeders know, like young dogs will pretty much eat anything that you stick in front of them. And so commonly I'll see that you get these 10-week-old puppies and that the owners just feed them way, way too much. And they're actually refusing food right off the rip. And that's really detrimental to the training. It's obviously not good for their health and stuff like that. So getting dialed in the amount, which obviously will change dog by dog, but I think is really important. And then, like I said, the routines as far as, when you're feeding them out of a bowl, what kind of structure you're applying to it, making sure the dog is getting used to eating around you. And that doesn't mean, messing with them while they're eating and petting them constantly and stuff. You don't want to create resource guarding by doing that, but you want the dog to realize that you're going to be near them while they're eating and you're not a threat, right?
Right. I'm glad that you mentioned, you said over petting. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that's one of the biggest problems that people gonna do. I mean, people constantly pet, and it irks me, to be honest. Like, don't touch my dog. You didn't see me touch the dog, and I wouldn't touch your dog. Yeah. But I mean, you can't really do that to people because the dogs love it. But I mean, it just kind of irks me a little bit because then you're actually conditioning the dog to where he's making you pet them now. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And these type of dogs, this is what they seeking. They constantly seek praise. Yeah. So if you start to overpraise, over reward, you cheapen the praise, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, but I think specifically in the context of eating, like surrounding mealtime, I think that the last thing you want to do is put yourself in a position where you're seeming like a threat to your dog, right? And when they're eating, I mean, I look at like with my dogs, like there's never been a situation I've needed to pet my dogs while they're eating. I just like, I can't even fathom any sort of idea or place I would need to be able to do that. Right. So I think we get these puppies and like to try to prevent resource guarding, all we do is mess with them while they're eating. You know what I mean? It's like we're petting them. I hear owners come in all the time. They're like, oh yeah, like I pet him all the time while he's eating. I stick my hand in there. I take the bowl away from him. I do all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, you're reassuring to your dog that you're a threat in that moment to try to avoid being a threat. You know what I mean? So just leave the dog alone. You don't want anybody petting you while you're eating your stuff. Just leave the dog alone. And tell people that all the time. Yeah, and it's a catch-22 because like at some point you want to test and make sure that if you do touch the dog while they're eating, that they're not going to like light up on you or anything like that. Obviously, that's an important hurdle to get past, but it should be done once in a blue moon with the intention of you're positioned to address it the second it happens, if it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, great. You don't have a resource guarder and there's no need to do it anymore.
Thank you. Don't create a problem. Don't create a problem by trying to fix it. Yeah. Nate, I know you guys have a whole pamphlet, getting back to the question. I know you guys have a whole pamphlet of about switching food and nutrition for an 8-week-old puppy when you first break it home. If you can break that down for some of our viewers about trying to switch too fast, switching to a raw diet, or switching around just from what your breeder was already doing, and some of the complications that can happen if you don't switch it the right way.
Yeah. So we always tell people whenever you go home, if you want to switch foods, we have them start, mixing kind of 50-50.
Sure.
Because we always send some food home anyway.
Yep.
So, if you do that for a few days, 3 or 4 days, 50-50, if you're wanting to switch to another food, we kind of talk about, mix it 50-50 and ease into that other food. Like, as you said, if you switch it real fast, they kind of tend to get diarrhea or whatever. And they may still get a little bit of that, but it's less likely. It might get a little bit of a loose stool or something like that.
Sure.
So that's what we do. So if you don't want to feed the same food that we feed, we suggest mixing 50-50 for a few days and easing them into the other food. Another thing is, when you're talking about feeding too much, that's very detrimental to a BOERBOEL, especially if they're feeding the wrong food. We have a information that we send home about the high protein and stuff with these BOERBOELs that grow so fast,
High protein.
and their bones. So their bones will grow, they'll get thick, they'll get real quick. But the thing is, the bones aren't hard. So we have clients that go home and they end up giving the dog so-called rickets or whatever you want to call it, but they start knuckling. I'm sure you've seen that before or heard of it. And I've had clients who I have spoken, I speak to them, we speak to them on the reg. Every time they're picking a puppy up, me and my wife go through it with the clients of what not to do, and some still do it. And then they're calling us freaking out because, they're knuckling over and thinking that we sent them home a deformed dog or something like that. And then we have to tell them to get the right supplements and, they don't need to go to a vet if they catch it quick enough. Some people don't, and they end up having to go to a vet. But yeah, with BOERBOELs, diet is very huge, and protein's very huge, and not feeding too much protein to a puppy because it can cause a disaster.
You don't want a lot of protein then, is what you're saying?
No. Not for a young puppy, not at least up to 6 months. And I would say even our big BOERBOELs, we still don't feed a food that's over 24 or 25%.
Really?
And a lot of the
protein do.
What's that?
Why is excessive protein detrimental to them?
It's not every puppy, but you end up getting some in the breed. They knuckle. So they're growing so fast, their bones are too big, that their joints and stuff, they aren't a BOERBOEL can get up, 80, 100 pounds at 6 to 8 months. And that's putting a lot of stress on their joints, and their bones aren't hard enough.
I understand.
And by knuckling, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, like their feet turn in and literally they'll fold over. They'll end up, they're walking, they're crippled.
You can accelerate this dog's growth.
And
you can accelerate its growth faster than you
That makes sense. Yeah. And is that something that if they do start knuckling, that could be reversed? I mean, is that like a long thing?
That's what I was talking about. When they get a hold of me, when they get a hold of us freaking out, we tell them to get calcium, phosphorus, and liquid vitamin D, and give it to them immediately. And if they catch it early enough, it can be fixed in 3 to 5 days. If they don't know what they're doing, and then all of a sudden the dog's in real bad shape, it might take 2 weeks or long, So, but yeah, and I've probably had it happen with. We've probably had it happen with probably 3 or 4 clients, probably, and most of them went home and started raw diets because when it comes to raw, you got to be on your game with raw. You're not just feeding. You're not taking out 5 pounds of hamburger and feeding that to a dog. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. So that's most of the time that's when it happens. So it's not really from a kibble. So
yeah, that makes sense. And is that similar to when you hear people talk about growing pains with dogs? We've had some dogs that as they grow, it's it's almost like they get stiffness and stuff like that. And you'll take them to the vet and they're like, nothing wrong. It's just they'll literally call it. I think there's a technical term for it, but they kind of refer to it as growing.
I would say that could be a cause of it, but with these, I haven't really seen that too much, or not with my dogs. I pay attention, but the knuckling's apparent. When it starts happening, it's very apparent.
I've had growing pains, quite a few. So that's not necessarily the diet. That's just some dogs. And you got to remember, some of these males, when they're going through their growth spurt, starting at about 5.5 months to 9 months, they can be putting on upwards of a pound a day.
Oh, wow.
So all that weight and pressure on their joints, they might be a little bit slower when they're waking up in the morning. They might limp just a tad bit when they get up in the morning. Just some stiffness, just real quick until they get up and get going. So those are the growing pains.
Got it.
Now, if it's lasting throughout the day, all day, then there might be some different issues. But if you got a little bit of lameness when you're first waking up, gotta remember this dog just put on a pound or so, and so it's growing hurts sometimes.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Jordan, so I know you're the most experienced of us all when it comes to this. So what can our clients, what can a BOERBOEL new family expect when they pick up a puppy from you, and what can they expect that first week or so when they go home? What's some issues they might run into, and what's some joyful stuff they might see taking that new puppy home, brother?
When you're taking that new puppy, the biggest thing that I want to do to establish with the puppy is focus for the new owner. I would like to see the puppy, you rewarding, focus, stick with the non-verbals. Every time you see that puppy looking at you, giving you a tense eye contact, that's when you're going to offer praise. That's when you want to offer food. That's why I say hand feed for the first day at least, minimum.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to maintain slow, controlled growth, right? So when we're feeding, less is best. If you can get away with one meal a day, that's important. You want to body proportions. You want to keep the dog lean is ideal. And I think that the chairman spoke on it a little bit, talked about the BOERBOEL is a yard dog. You know, they don't have it. Traditionally, this dog was on a farm and had open space. I think a lot of what we see with the rickets comes from, or the knuckling over, is because of the muscle to mass ratio is improper. So because this dog is not active and involved with the environment as they should be, or they're not maybe running around, moving around as much as they should, because of the way that we tend to keep dogs as pets traded large percentage of the day.
Vitamin D, sunlight.
Yeah, they got to get out there in that sun. They got to get out there in that environment. They need to be strong. They need to be moving that muscle around, you know, get it impacting with the environment to build up the muscle to support that mass. And I think that it has to do with the way that we keep dogs in the United States. A lot of us tend to want a dog to be a goldfish and keep him in the box where he can't really move around. He doesn't have that room to stretch his legs. This is so important for a working breed, for an athletic dog, for a dog that's supposed to be a functioning dog. It needs to be moving around.
Yeah. And when Jordan says moving around, he means playing, getting natural exercise with you. But he's not talking about, I'm sure he's not talking about some people going to the extreme with an obstacle course for young BOERBOEL, jumping up and down on stuff. So there's certain things you gotta watch out for as far as exercise, because again, these dogs are growing, their growth plates are still open, and the only thing, one of your main jobs is to protect its hips, bones, and joints during those growth spurts. So he means running around, and whatever jumping, whatever running, whatever playing is doing naturally as a puppy.
Right, not to the point of exhaustion. You're not trying to fatigue the dog.
You're not trying to run an obstacle course with it at that younger age, at 8 weeks old.
What's the ideal session for you? What would you say, David?
Short and sweet. So I always say, you know, when you're doing your actual sit down training sessions with dogs, you want to keep, you've mentioned like engagement and focus a couple of times. You want to make sure that you're starting on a high note and ending on a high note with things. So generally speaking, with our young dogs, we'll do sessions of like 5 to 10 minutes, right? And like generally no longer than that, at least initially with things as we're shaping things, right? We talked about like teaching the dog how to learn. So I might teach the dog how to follow food, right? I might be teaching the dog how to overcome certain hurdles they might be fearful of. So like if you have a dog that you mentioned, you know, different environmental things like a vacuum cleaner spooks them or something like that, I might do engagement sessions around the vacuum cleaner while it's just sitting in the corner, or sitting in the corner turned on from a distance, doing engagement sessions around it, things like that. But ending on a really high note. You want the dog ending the training sessions wanting more, so the next time you go to do it, that they're just as engaged, if not more, as they were the session before with things.
Elaborate just a little bit when you say engagement. What exactly do you mean?
Yeah, it really is just focus. Does the dog want to do the thing that you're asking them to do to achieve something, right? So a lot of times early on in the training process, we're using a lot of food rewards. So you mentioned the hand feeding and stuff. So they're working for food. They want the food, obviously. So is the dog engaged with you? Do you have their attention because they want the thing that you have for them? And if you have their intention because they want the thing that you have for them, then you could start to shape expectations, whether in the form of obedience commands or whether in the form of other behaviors that you might be wanting.
Right. So it's keeping the dog attentive.
Yes.
You know, interested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the other really important thing to realize is, again, especially with young dogs where these training sessions are only 5 minutes, 10 minutes at max. And honestly, like, what are you going to do? 5 of them a day, something like that. So training from the standpoint of the engagement and the obedience commands is such a small percentage of your day, right? If you look at it 24 hours a day, it's only really going to be at the most probably an hour out of your day. And the rest of the time, the importance is shaping the routines that you want and setting the boundaries that you want. So I think another thing you mentioned, obviously, 8 to 12-week-old dogs. One thing that I personally tell all my clients that have puppies of that age is that dog should be on a leash almost 100% of the time in the house. That doesn't necessarily mean you're holding the leash, but there should be in the house. Yes, okay. In the house. And here's the reasoning for that. Let's say the dog is not on a leash and you're trying to set boundaries of either, I don't want you to get on this piece of furniture over here. I don't want you to go into that room, or I don't want you to get into the trash can or pick up that thing off the ground or whatever it may be. If you don't have a leash on, you're chasing this dog around all the time. You're resorting to yelling at it. You're resorting to try to redirect it and stuff. And you mentioned like nonverbals, like when we're early in the training process, the dog doesn't know anything yet. The dog doesn't know, come, sit down, no, right? So you can't tell it anything. And if you're telling it to do stuff, the dog doesn't know what you want and you're teaching it to blow you off, right? So if you have a leash on in the house, you could start to shape the boundaries non-verbally, right? So let's say a dog's loose up here, right? And they have a leash on and they're getting ready to like go in that trash can or something. I don't even need to say anything. I could just get up, go grab that leash real quick, give a little pop in my direction to engage them back on me and get their attention off of that with almost zero conflict, where they never have a chance to rehearse it in the first place. Where if they didn't have a leash on, again, it becomes a game of then, you know, we're playing and it's keep away and they're running around the house and all that kind of stuff, right? The other advantage that a leash has is, my last puppy I had, he's about 2 now, but when he was a young dog, I filmed my podcast here up here every week, and he would come up here with us. And in times when I needed him to just settle for a little bit, instead of putting him in a crate for long periods of time, what I was able to do is take that leash, and there's a little table over there that I literally would just loop the handle under it, and I would back tie him off to that spot, and he would learn that he had to exist within that bubble. So you're starting to create this concept of the dog learning how to do nothing by restricting some of that freedom, but them still being a part of what's going on.
I hope everybody out there is writing notes like I am. I'm writing copious amounts of notes right now, highlighting things. I'm learning. This is some good information. And as you guys seen, I just had that 7.5-week-old puppy out here. Help me, panel. Please help me. As you can see, I had to put her up because she's nipping at me. She's biting at me. When I put her down, she's biting on my ankles.
Yeah.
I can't control her. If I'm a new client and I feel like I need to take her home, you guys help me. Somebody tell me, how can I deal with a little Tyrannosaurus biting all over me? Please.
Well, and the issue with
go get her so everybody can see like you guys are trying to help. And do I pop her on the nose? Do I yell at her? What do I do to stop all this biting she's doing?
So the issue with that is because you didn't have the dog on a leash, you're resorting to your only way to stop it is grabbing her and pushing her and this and that, which to puppies, that just seems like you're trying to play with them, right? So it starts to become this game and it reinforces the behavior unintentionally, where if you have them on a leash, you're holding the leash, the dog starts nipping at you and stuff like that. You could literally just give them a little pop, redirect them with that leash, stop them from doing it, because you're not physically interacting with them with like your hands and talking to them and all those types of things. You could almost prevent the behavior from happening and stop that habit from getting created in the first place.
Right. I always say, I use the philosophy that the leash is your direct connection to the dog.
Yeah.
It almost forms, like it's like your cable.
Yeah.
It's like a where you're connected to the dog, but it doesn't. You don't have to use your hands. You see.
So the leash would help me stop from chasing her around right now.
It sure would.
The leash, that's why I got to get the leash to stop this.
So, with young dogs, it's important to realize like a lot of the behavioral issues people will hire us for at 10 weeks, 11 weeks, 12 weeks, those were all things the dog didn't just know how to do when you got them, right? They learned very, very quickly what they can get away with, what they cannot get away with. And all of these behaviors are generally very self-reinforcing, meaning the more they do it, the stronger it gets. It's fun for them to do it. So the more we could prevent them from happening in the first place, the less work we have to do later on when the dog starts getting a lot bigger and putting the kibosh on that kind of stuff when it's going to be even more challenging to do.
Yeah, talk about the tools. So you mentioned the leash. what other tools are essential?
Sure. So I think with young dogs, you want to have a way to redirect and prevent things, which that is generally the leash, right? That's generally going to be the leash, obviously. You want to have some sort of reinforcer to be able to tell the dog when you like what they're doing. That's generally going to be a combination of food, toys, and praise, right? And then you want to have one thing where if you're redirecting and your blocking doesn't work, so let's say you have a dog that's extremely nippy or bitey or whatever it may be, and you just holding them back with the leash doesn't, they're just too persistent with it. You want to have something where you could give a little bit more of a punishment to decrease that behavior. And generally with young dogs, I'll use something like, they sell something called a pet corrector, which is like a little can of compressed air, or, you know, some people will use like a spray bottle or something like that. Something that's going to be motivating enough for the dog to want to avoid it, so that every time they rehearse that behavior and you do give that consequence, that you actually see a decrease in the behavior. But I think it all starts with making sure we're not reinforcing the behaviors in the first place. So like the biting and stuff, if you don't want biting, when that dog bites, you cannot interact with them while they're doing so, right? You cannot pet them. You cannot talk to them. And you got to realize, in your audience, especially with BOERBOELs, I mean, they're big, strong dogs, right? And when they're puppies, they're cute as shit, obviously. And, you know, the jumping and the biting and the nibbling and all that kind of stuff, like, doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But you got to realize we're raising adults. We're not raising puppies, right? And when that dog becomes freaking 120, 140 pounds, you know, that's going to be a really, really big problem later on. So you want to stop that immediately.
So you just said something that I tell my clients all the time. I know I'm running around with the puppy, but I'm listening. I always tell my clients, do not let a cute 20-pound puppy do anything you don't want a 160-pound dog doing. So setting those boundaries early, just because it's cute at 20 pounds. If you don't want that dog on the furniture at 160 pounds, don't let it on there at 20 pounds.
Well,
you don't want it on.
And on top of that, like you said, these dogs get 100 pounds by 6 months, 8 months. So they're still puppies at that age. And if you're not correcting them whenever they're 20 pounds and 30 pounds at 8, 10 weeks, you got a 6-month-old dog it's still a puppy. So it's still in that play stage and everything. So it's even worse than another breed that, you know, maxes out at 80 pounds, because it's going to be wanting to play. It's still going to be in that puppy stage of wanting to play at 100, 120 pounds, doing those behaviors that are correct.
Yeah. And for as innocent as it might be in the dog's head when they're rehearsing those behaviors, like, people can get really, really injured by some of that. You know, like, you get a dog that big jumping on you just because they like you, right? And they can really hurt somebody doing that. So yeah, you really, really got to stop that and set that tone immediately. So we got a comment right here I kind of want to address, because I think it's a good one. So this James said, so before a training session, would it be best to fast your pup so it would be more focused on you? So I think that's a common misconception, that you should be fasting the dog prior to training sessions. And I think the reason why a lot of people need to resort to that is because they're feeding too much in the first place. So the way I view hand feeding and training for treats or any of those types of things is whatever I've determined to be the amount of food that the dog would generally eat in a day that would be appropriate for them, that they would eat all of, and, you know, maybe be a little teeny bit hungry still at the end of things, because you kind of want to keep your dogs a little bit on the hungrier side. Obviously, you know, you got to use your best judgment with that, obviously. But I'll figure out what that amount is. So let's say it's 4 cups per day of kibble for a dog, or 3 cups, or whatever it may be. I'm going to, however much I want to feed in training, I'm going to subtract that from the amount that I'm going to feed them in their day-to-day, right? So if I want a cup's worth of food to feed, I'm going to put that to the side, and then I'm only going to feed them 3 cups out of a bowl, right? So you're always going to be playing this ratio game of how much you're feeding out of hand versus how much you're feeding in a bowl. And if you're doing that and you're feeding an appropriate amount of food, the dog should always have enough motivation for that food to work for it without the need of really fasting them.
Gotcha. So the training treats and stuff aren't extras. They're actually part of it.
It's a part of it.
Meal.
And you got to do the math with it. I had a client one time come in that had a dog that, you know, 2 pitties, probably 65 pounds or so. And on their sheet, they were feeding the dogs like a half a cup of kibble a day. And I was like, a half a cup of kibble? I was like, are you kidding me? But turns out they had things so regimented between their edible bones they were giving them and the treats they were giving them. And they did the math on all the calories that were in all that kind of stuff, where it all tallied out in the end to be the appropriate amount of calories that the dog should be consuming, right? So obviously not everybody's going to get as crazy with looking up the individual calories of a treat and stuff like that, but you want to use your best judgment with it as you're using treats of roughly how much is going to be in this and how much do I need to subtract from how much I'm actually feeding the dog so I don't accidentally overfeed them.
All right. So back to the nibbling or the biting.
Yeah.
How do you correct a puppy that's nibbling or biting so it doesn't think that you're playing with it?
Yeah. Good question. So I give dogs a couple week kind of grace period with things. So when I first bring them home, like 8, because I know you said this whole thing's like 8 to 12 weeks, right? 8 to 10 weeks, a lot of my focus is on blocking and redirecting, right? It's not setting really firm corrections or anything. It's making sure, one, I'm not reinforcing
Blocking and
it.
redirecting.
Blocking and redirecting. So blocking would be using the leash to prevent the dog from rehearsing the thing, obviously. Redirecting would be giving them something else to put their engagement onto, obviously. But the reason why the leash is so important with it is because when you're blocking them with the leash or you're redirecting them onto something else, at no point are you interacting and engaging with the dog. Right? You're not like telling them, hey, don't do that, or pushing them and making it seem like you're creating a game out of it. It's like totally like I'm not even paying attention to the dog. Like they're nibbling at me. And it's just using the leash to just kind of stop them from doing it. Right. Once we're past the couple week stages, depending on how much of a reduction I see in it, if the dog really isn't rehearsing it that much, I'll kind of keep going that path. If, every now and then you get one of those puppies that's just real feisty, right? And really wants to do a lot of the nibbling and stuff. That's where I start setting a little bit more firm of boundaries with stuff where I might be giving a much more firm leash pop, or I might be using, like I said, like the pet corrector for it or something along those lines. And generally simultaneously, like once we hit like the 14-week mark, the 16-week mark, stuff like that, we're switching to formal leash training. I'm generally starting to introduce some sort of training collar into things. And I could be in a position to add, more firm corrections for things as need be.
Right. So earlier it was mentioned like, popping them on the nose or something like that. So really, so everybody knows, whenever a puppy's biting you, I mean, if everybody's had a puppy before, when you pop it on the nose, what's it usually do? Usually it starts punching and biting at you, right?
Uh-huh.
So it thinks you're playing.
Yeah. I think the important thing to realize when you get into corrections is, in order for a correction to be a correction, it has to be motivating enough to the dog to want to avoid it moving forward. And frankly, most of the things we do to try to stop dogs from doing stuff like physically with our hands and stuff are not very motivating to them. You know what I mean? And I'm not like against popping the dog on the nose for it, or sometimes you'll do like if a puppy is biting at me, I'll kind of grab their lip and like push it on their tooth a little bit so it starts getting uncomfortable or something along those lines. But I just find that, as you're progressing through your training process, switching to some sort of training collar, like a pinch collar or something like that, is generally just going to be a little bit more effective,
Right. I see a big thing that I notice with people is they tend to have too much pressure on the leash.
Sure.
So you can't really effectively pop the dog if it's always tight.
Yeah.
You gotta give the dog some slack so there's a clear an apparent difference between the correction. The correction it feels different. I like to use the training collar with the links in it, so it starts. You got the noise. It starts to click, and then once it starts to get too tight, it starts to. It really is not about the choking of the dog. It's really to me the correction is actually the fur getting pinched up in there a little bit, simulating what the mom would do around the neck. That is the true and effective way to issue a correction. What's your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I mean, it again, as you get into, this would be in the category of like more formal leash training with dogs, obviously. You have dogs that are motivated by, physical discomfort, and you have dogs that are motivated by things startling them, right? And, when you get into like leash pops and stuff, depending on the dog, some of the dogs are motivated just by the startle aspect of like, whoa, that thing happened really quick. It's like, whoa, what the heck was that, right? And then you have other ones where you're depending more on like the pinch collar actually pinching the dog a little bit and creating an actually physically uncomfortable sensation with it. But yeah, the constant tension on the leash, if there's always tension on the leash, then you're diminishing all of the value of it, right? We want for the leash to be a form of communication, right? Whether in the form of trying to get the dog to do something or get the dog to not do something. And in order for it to be in order for it to be communication, we have to be very deliberate about where we're applying pressure. And if it's on all the time, you can't apply more pressure. You know what I mean? It's just there, and you're teaching them to tone it out. No different than if you're constantly talking to the dog, right? When you go to ask a command out of them, you've lost all the value behind your words, right? It's a very similar concept. You just need to be deliberate about the information you're giving your dog.
Everything should be deliberate, and that's why I try to always encourage people to say less, do more, show, guide, gentle guidance, gentle handling, just like you said, blocking, repositioning. I don't know the exact technical terms, but I kind of like will put my hand, like you said, blocking. I guess that's the technical terms. Blocking and redirecting the energy, redirecting the focus, letting the puppy know, hey, listen, pay attention to your behavior right now. Pay attention to your behavior. I like to keep a puppy in proximity, so I don't want them to be wandering too far. And that's why I like to use, anytime. That's one of my favorite tools is the I guess is it a choke collar? Is that
the pinch collar?
Not a pinch collar, a choker.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's choke chains and there's pinch collars. There are two separate
choke
tools.
chain. I like the choke chain.
Okay.
But it's not for choking, really. It's more of a pressure.
I've seen that beautiful black and tan that Savage Kingdom Midwest got over there, and I can hear it yelping, and that gave me my next question because I just came home with this beautiful 8-week-old puppy.
Sure.
And I haven't been able to sleep in the last few days. It's in the kennel all day and all night. My wife's getting pissed and want me to take it back. How do I solve that? What do I do if this puppy's crying all night? Why is it crying all night?
Generally, it's just a change of environment. The dog has no idea what's going on. It's like, I'm in a new place. I'm away from my siblings. I'm away from the people that I'm comfortable with. I'm still only 8 weeks old, so I don't even know what life is. You know what I mean? So that could be stressful. And I think that, it's important to realize that you have a puppy, right? You have an 8-week-old puppy, and there are certain things that puppies just do, right? And being introduced to a crate for the first time. Being introduced to a crate for the first time. Like, I don't know. I'm assuming you guys probably do a little bit of kennel introduction with the dogs before they go home. But if you don't, right, whatever. And, it's brand new to them, right? So I would expect that when you go put them in this thing that they have no idea what it is, they're going to protest a little bit. And I think most people make the mistake of very early on, right? When the dog starts protesting, they let the dog out. And what do? They reinforce it, and they make the dog try harder than next time. So again, getting back to being deliberate about stuff. If you are going to stick the dog in a crate, right, you have to be prepared to wait that dog out until it settles down, even if it's all night initially. My puppy, for the first freaking 3 nights that I had him, screamed all night long, and it was awful. And my wife and I were sitting there ready to freaking pull our hair out, and we let him cry through it, right? We got 3 days into it. And then he started to finally settle down a little bit after.
Take it to the farthest room on the other side of the house.
Or
it's got to learn to be alone.
It has to learn to be alone. Now, if it's really, really bad, let's say you've never let the dog out before when it's whining, and it's like you're 3 days in and the dog is still doing it. Sometimes making it a little easier on the dog initially and moving the crate to like in your room or something can help them settle down and get used to it. And then you could kind of reverse engineer it. And then once the dog is good in the room, move to the room next to you and kind of progress it that way. That can be beneficial sometimes. But yeah, in most cases, it's just a matter of let them whine it out,
And you got to figure that they were with a litter of 4, 6, 8. They had all these friends around. They don't have the friends that they're sleeping with now. Like you said, it's a foreign environment.
Yeah, everything's new.
And that, like another thing. So what's your thoughts on this when you talk about being alone? Like I said, you got to teach them to be alone. Like when you talk about separation anxiety, some dogs get separation anxiety. So if that dog hasn't been taught to be left alone, that might set you up for failure later on too. When you're leaving for long periods of time, and if it become a destructive dog.
Well, and to kind of piggyback off of that, I would say that a lot of kennel anxiety or the dog not learning how to be alone or not learning how to do nothing, I usually think it's directed to, they're away from people or they would rather be stimulated doing something else, obviously. so much of it starts with when the dog is not in the crate also, you know, and not being so contingent on you constantly interacting with them, you know, being mindful of just, you know, not touching the dog and just letting the dog kind of hang out and exist and learn to occupy itself a little bit while you're there to obviously lifeguard and set boundaries where you need to, but teaching them to kind of do nothing, or things like I mentioned, like back tying a leash off to something when you're hanging out watching TV and getting the dog used to existing in a space like that. Like all of those techniques are going to set you up for success when you need to stick them in a crate, because it's not so foreign of a concept when you go to do it.
Yeah, let me say something real quick because I got a question, and I may be doing this all wrong because
Sure.
of it's a personal thing for me. I'm against. I mean, like, I'm claustrophobic. I don't like to be my movement restricted. I like to be free, right?
Mhm.
And so I always encourage my clients to tether the dog to a doorknob or something, put the pillow down, and then if the dog starts yelping, I might walk over there and give it the attention that it doesn't want. So I might walk over there and give it a couple pops off the leash.
Sure.
Like, hey, is this what you're asking for?
Mhm.
So they don't always associate every time they start crying or making this noise, I'm gonna come over there and it's gonna be a pleasurable experience.
Sure.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm doing myself a disservice, my clients a disservice. Maybe you can elaborate on that because I just don't feel like the dog can be a dog locked down in. I try to keep people from the idea of having a dog locked down in the crate. You know what I'm saying? Before BOERBOELs, I just think it's so counterproductive.
Sure. Yeah, I think all of this gets down to the word balance, right? Which is, you know, it's contingent on the individual situation. Like it's just there's plenty of clients I have that their lives don't necessarily permit them having a young dog just loose in their house constantly all the time. You know what I mean? And they have to have some sort of way to confine them. Now, confinement doesn't always mean a crate. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of people that can, you know, puppy proof a small room or like a laundry room or something like that and have the dog exist in that area. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of alternatives to it, but the idea is just you're teaching the dog to be alone and be doing nothing, whether that's in a crate or in a laundry room or in a kitchen or tethered to a doorknob or whatever it may be. But I think the idea of you need to be able to confine the dog to some extent because that's your management, right? You're not going to be able to supervise absolutely everything that the dog does all the time, 24 hours a day, you know, 7 days a week for the next, you know, 2 years of the dog's life. So by being able to confine them in some way, shape, or form, whichever way you ultimately choose to do, you could prevent them from rehearsing bad habits when you're not in a position to monitor them and supervise them. And that's the importance, in my opinion, of, you know, things like a crate or a pen or a kennel or something like that.
Quick savage tip for everybody. Dogs live a lot of their life through their nose. So a lot of their life is lived through their nose. And as they get to play with you and love on you all day, they're learning your scent. You are what's their new comfort now since they don't have their brothers and sisters. I take my old shirts every day that I wore that I've been loving on the puppy with, and I'll put it in the kennel with them. I'll give them a shirt with my smell. And I find that soothes some puppies because, again, they live in their life through their nose. If they can smell me in their environment, if they can smell my current girlfriend at the time, if I got one. So if they can smell the family members in their environment, that gives them a little bit of comfort. It won't completely fix the problem of yapping all night, but it will give them a little bit less anxiety because, you know, I'm not saying put your $80 work shirt or your sweatshirt, but if you have an undershirt or something that carries your scent on it, if you put it in the environment with them, that helps soothe them down because now they're smelling you. They're still constantly smelling while they're asleep. So it gives them a little bit more comfort. Not a 100% proof trick, but it does help settle them down some.
Yeah, I've got no issue with that. Yeah. I mean, it's the same concept as like, why would the dog in the kennel or wherever, you know, be, you know, calmer in the room with you, even though they're still in the kennel? It's like, because they know you're there. Right. So yeah, if you giving them that shirt while they're in another room helps them feel like you're kind of still there and kind of bridge that gap a little and make it a little easier. I've got no issue with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say that I feel it's I forgot what I was gonna say. My fault, y'all.
So I know we're running. This hour goes by fast. I wanted to try to see if we can hit a couple of more things. Fear stages. Are you guys familiar with puppy fear stages?
Yeah.
And if we can get somebody to elaborate on the fear stages and what's some things you can do for the puppy when they do see the fear. I know we kind of briefly touched on it, but say you turn on the vacuum cleaner and they and run the other direction or something, or a car backfires, or even if they see a large garbage can outside during a walk and they don't want to go next to it or something. Is there a fear stage? Have you guys heard of that?
Yeah.
And how do we kind of combat or work through the fear stage?
Yeah. I don't know the scientific definitions of fear stages, but I refer to them as either fear stages or mature as the dog starts to kind of go through maturity, right? And the way I describe it to people is, if you have a dog that might be a little bit genetically kind of skittish or apprehensive or whatever it may be,
Aloof.
as they start coming into their own a little bit and becoming a little bit more confident and stuff like that, those things that may have spooked them a little bit before and you didn't really notice, they're going to start becoming confident to act on those things a little bit. So you'll see that, that trash can that maybe they walked by a gazillion times and maybe in their mind they were a little, I don't know about that trash can. One day it's like out of nowhere, they start lighting up on that trash can and barking at it and growling at it or whatever it may be, right? And it's this kind of conflicted state as they're having all these hormones kind of rushing into them. They're getting older, they're coming into themselves, and they're seeing how they can control the environment around them to make themselves feel a little bit more confident. That's kind of how I've observed them before. And particularly with some of your working breeds, your Mastiffs, your BOERBOELs, obviously, and a lot of your Corsos and German Shepherds and stuff like that, I find it's significantly more prominent with those breeds. And I usually find that, I know they say that there's a couple different fear periods. The more intense one that I see is usually between like 8 months and a year and a half is what I've found.
Okay.
I remember what I was going to say. My fault, y'all. Yeah, I'm a family man, and I got 5 daughters, a wife. I'm the only one in the house. Everybody else is nurturing, coddling, loving. My daughters is all dog. Every time they hear the baby cry, every time they hear the puppy cry, they run into the rescue. And I think what that does is I wanted to say that it's important to be consistent across the board with different people, family members and whatnot. We definitely do not want to coddle and reward the behavior that's undesired.
Yes.
So consistency is a big part of effective training and management for me.
Yeah. And real quick, because I don't think I answered your question you had about like when you have the dog tethered to a doorknob, and if the dog does start making a racket, you'll go over and give them the undesired attention, like a leash pop or something like that, obviously. I don't think that's wrong at all. I think the middle ground between what you mentioned, which is when the dog is having a hard time with that, people going over and coddling it, and then when the dog is having, a hard time acting up like that, you going over and giving the corrections is first and foremost. Like I said, with any new dog that I'm working with, I take away the reinforcement behind the behavior. The reinforcement behind the behavior is the dog getting any attention in that situation. And then I see how far can I get with that. And then where I plateau off with, so let's say it makes it a little bit better, but this dog still is very loud and noisy and stuff like that. Then I'll start adding in the corrections in order to stop the behavior. But I like for the dogs, especially at a very young age, to kind of learn how to make their own decisions a little bit through what's reinforcing and what's not reinforcing, and me kind of controlling that, right?
Right.
So
right.
I don't think that, it's not wrong by any means. The problem is when most people try to interrupt it, they're doing something that's actually reinforcing to the dog, and they're shooting themselves in the foot. They might think that they're giving the dog the unwanted attention, but in the dog's mind, they're still just getting attention.
Getting attention. Yeah. So I another thing that I do too is I take them right back to the spot. Sure. I have the pillow there for him to lay down. He may be destroying something. He may be chewing on the door. He might start, but it's my way of kind of keeping the eye on him, showing him the appropriate desired behavior.
Yeah.
And anytime that he's displaying something other than, he might start chewing on the cord, I'll go over there, pop.
Yep.
Back on the spot. And it's not even no.
Yeah.
It's just, look, that's not what we do around here.
Okay.
This what you're here chilling.
Yeah. You're setting a boundary. Yeah. You're
right.
showing the dog what's expected of them and what's not expected of them, right?
You want to chew something, chew the bone.
Yep. Hey, guys, so I just got this puppy. I love it, and I want it to have friends. So I just got it. It's 8 weeks old. It's had one set of vaccinations. I'm ready to go to the dog park today so it can make a whole bunch of friends and frolic around and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yay or nay?
No.
No?
Yeah. Here's my spiel on dog parks, right? Dog parks are a good idea in theory, right? A centralized place you could take your dog to go interact and meet other dogs. Like, that sounds great, right? Like, obviously, socialization with other dogs is important, right? The problem is multiple things. One, it's totally unregulated from a vaccination standpoint, right? It's a breeding ground for diseases and stuff like that. You don't know that all the other dogs there are vaccinated. You don't know if one dog has giardia that they're spewing around the entire freaking dog park, which we all know how much of a pain in the ass that is if a dog gets it. Past that, from the actual socialization standpoint, there's no central authority figure there. There's nobody that sits there and says, hey, your dog's being too much. Hey, your dog's being too much. You're at the discretion of the owners making those calls about their own dogs. And I know I'm pretty biased to my dogs, and I'm a dog trainer. So I would assume your average dog owner is not going to be self-aware enough to know when their dog is being a little too much. So it's just kind of a recipe for disaster. And you have one bad incident at a dog park, it could really, really set your socialization back. It could really cause a lot of fear problems, especially if they're going through something like a fear period. So I don't like dog parks. I save socialization for dogs that I know and trust. If you've got a friend that has a dog where you could set up a good environment, to let those dogs meet, if you know the dog's vaccinated and stuff like that, obviously, that's going to be much more productive in the long run.
So I probably should pass up the dog parks because of vaccination and issues with other people's dogs.
Yeah.
And,
you know what I do for the dog park? When I see a dog, I ride my bike. Me and the dog we ride right past it.
Yep.
That's what we do.
Good distraction training. Yeah.
We ride right past the dog park. It's on our route. It's a dog park.
Nate, are you going to the dog park with me?
No, I'm absolutely not going to the dog park. I don't even allow people to bring their dogs over to my place.
Yeah.
I just even if they are vaccinated, I just don't. And same thing with clients and stuff. Like there's certain, like, I don't let them walk around the whole property. I don't know what's on their shoes. I don't know what's anything. Like, if I show them puppies, I'll show them the dogs, but I show them the dogs from a distance, like, because I got like a whole pasture and stuff. I let the dogs run in, but my dogs are out where they're supposed to be, and we don't take people out walking around or anything because I don't know where they've been, their environment, gas stations, anything. Something everybody knows. Like, what if they happen to step in parvo somewhere?
Yeah.
You bring that, parvo sticks to your shoe and you can walk that all over the place. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster.
So I guess wild wolves, coyotes, and dogs, they don't go on play dates with other packs.
Right.
They don't go out and find other dogs to play with, right?
Yeah.
They just enjoy their family pack. Okay. Yeah. So we can strike out dog parks. Personal preferences. We can strike out dog parks from a vaccination standpoint because unregulated disease, we don't know who's vaccinating their dogs and not vaccinating. You don't want to bring something home. And then again, we don't know who has control of their dogs and who don't. And
so even in public, like when we take our dogs out, we don't allow our dogs to interact with the other dogs. They're okay around the other dogs.
Yep.
My dogs have plenty of dogs to interact with here at home.
Yeah.
So all their friends that they have are here at home. So we can go in public and my dog knows, how it's supposed to act. It doesn't go trying to go after other dogs, but I don't let my dog go up and sniff other dogs or hop and play. And I don't want other people to let their dogs come and sniff my dog and hop and play. Because for one, they don't know each other. And you can read body language and all that stuff, but you don't know. A good situation can turn bad, really quick with a stranger. So yeah, we can go in public just fine, but my dog has plenty of friends at home.
Yeah. I usually tell my clients that I want my dog socialized enough that they don't embarrass you at the veterinarian's office, that you can walk your dog through there and they're not reacting, barking, growling, or getting paranoid at the vet's office. That's about as much socialization as they need, not to embarrass you at the vet's office or have to have a muzzle when you visit there.
So let me clarify one thing, because I don't want to say that I'm totally against. The reason that I ride past the dog park that is in my neighborhood, because they have replaced the grass with rocks, small pebbles. And I feel like that's just not sanitary. It's dust, it's dirty, it's just not ideal for me. But I have seen some dog parks, 3 acre. They got a 3 acre dog park. My guy takes his dog. I think this picture behind me here is his dog is at a dog park in New York. It's like a 3 acre dog park. And I think if you go to the dog park, you should it can be beneficial if you have a mission and objective. Okay, I would like to see my dog focus with a bunch of distractions. I would like to see my dog stay engaged with around a bunch of different dogs. I would like to see how my dog is going to respond to training and so on and so forth. If you do decide to go to the dog park, let it be with a purpose, not just free time, right?
It's not just okay.
Unregulated, because that could be counterproductive to your training efforts. Everything should be structured. And that's just I mean, I don't know if that's 100% correct, but I don't want any, I'm not, that's just my personal.
I think
because I've had I've seen my dog at the dog park, and they don't really like to play with other dogs, to be honest.
Sure.
That puppy parks that's a human thing. We want to see dogs play with each other. You and your family is the dog's pack. That, in my opinion, I think puppy parks and stuff, that's a human idea. That's us putting our human emotions on the animal. Like, again, in the wild, they don't go out searching for other animals to play and frolic with. They have their pack. That's what they do with their pack. If they go see another pack of wolves, another pack of coyotes, it's a different story for them. So that's more of a human emotion. I think we've covered a lot of stuff that that we needed to cover for the 8 to 12 weeks. There's one last looming thing. David, you hit on part of it earlier when you were saying about laundry rooms and puppy proofing. Mm-hmm. I just brought this 8-week-old puppy home. Is chewing on the cords to my TV. Is doing a whole lot of unsafe stuff. I have some Tide Pods underneath the sink, and it keeps getting. So how can we keep our puppies safe from the environment that we've created? How can we make our environment that we just brought our puppy home to a little bit more safe for it?
Yeah. Management and communication. So management means obviously looking at the environment you're in before you bring the dog home, and looking at this dog, if it's moving around, how much stuff is there that this dog could possibly get into, right? Trying to manage that environment, put things away, lock things in a cabinet, et cetera, right? Make sure there's not a bunch of stuff out that the dog can destroy. Make sure if you have high value things out, you absolutely put those things away. I'm sure every single one of us who's had dogs has had something of value destroyed at some point by a dog, right? And you live, you learn with that kind of stuff, obviously. And then obviously the supervision side of things, I think, is the most important thing. When you get a dog that's 8 to 12 weeks old, you have an infant in your house, and you would never in a million years leave an infant just loose on your floor while you're going and taking a shower, or, any of those types of things, right? So that dog really, like, I go overboard with it, where that dog should not have a second of unsupervised time. And when that dog is being supervised, you should always be in a position to redirect or block if the dog starts trying to rehearse something that you don't want it to rehearse, right? And that's where, like I said, I like having the leash dragging in the house at all times, so I could do that really, really easily. But even stuff like, if you have an open floor plan, and I hear all the time, the people think they're supervising the dog, but they're distracted watching TV, and the dog just sneaks behind the couch and has an accident or something like that. You know what I mean? So you really, really, really need to make sure that there are eyes on that dog at all times until it really starts to earn your trust as it gets older.
Good point. Like you said, you won't let a baby, a 8-month-old baby or a 3-month-old baby, just crawl around the house unsupervised, because you're catching up on that last couple of minutes of the Maury Povich or Jerry Springer show. Constant supervision, right? Constant supervision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, supervision is everything. Supervision, and keep in mind, when you bring a dog home, all those behavioral issues, they don't know them yet, right? They only learn them when they get to rehearse them. So don't let the dog rehearse things that you're not going to want them to be doing later on.
Great. Man, really very informative. I hope everybody took notes. And if you didn't, guess what? you could always go back and rewatch. David is Miracle K9 Training on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. I love the videos, man. He's always covering a bunch of different information, informative topics. You can learn from the others, people that's doing other things with different breeds. And like we said, I mean, the dogs are dogs at the end of the day. So you can't, just because it's a shepherd or just because it's a Rottweiler doesn't mean that there is no information for you to pick up there being a BOERBOEL owner.
Yep.
You want to, y'all give them a follow, man. This is really been a treat. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure meeting you. And
happy to be here.
I will be following you, and we need to have you on more. It was a lot of insightful information.
Yeah, I'd love to do it again. It was great kind of chopping it up with you guys. And, obviously there's plenty for me to learn from you guys also, as far as, the BOERBOEL side. I mean, you guys are working with serious dogs. I mean, we worked with a lot of BOERBOELs before, and they're great dogs, but man, they could be a real handful if you don't know what you're doing with them, So I appreciate that you guys are doing stuff like this, helping to continue to educate people and, doing the breed justice. I think that's really, really awesome what you guys are doing. So this is cool, and I'm happy to do it again. So.
Thank you, man. Yeah, you would definitely made it a great show. We was really appreciative. How we do around here is about community and building and trying to establish something that's strong, that can last the test of time. Longevity is important for us. We want people to have lasting relationships with their dogs, because I always will say this too. I'm gonna do everything I can to get you off to a great start, because that dog is leaving from me and it's looking to you. You're his new mom, and they loving you. And then if something happens and it doesn't work out, man, that's a very hard for the BOERBOEL, because they form such a strong bond. Yeah. And then you have to. It's a sad thing for the dog.
Sure.
It's a sad thing for the dog if they don't fit in, and you determine that it's something that, and then the dog comes back to me, and now I have to train the dog and all kinds of stuff. So I just want people to get off to a good start, have a strong foundation, and then have a great ending.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
An hour is just not long enough, everybody. We want to give you guys all the information possible. There's some stuff that we weren't able to fit into today's show, but we are very cognizant of your time, and we appreciate you giving us an hour plus every single Thursday, 7 p.m. Central Time. BOERBOEL breakdown and discussion. Your must-stop shop for all the latest, up-to-date, factual information on the BOERBOEL community. Join in every Thursday, and you can catch various lives. We have the BOERBOEL Universe. You're hearing it for the first time today. BOERBOEL Universe, multiple live shows from genetics to exercise to true to standard dogs, being hosted by various affiliations of us, of the BOERBOEL Breakdown Discussion, which is the hub of our network, available on streaming platforms, live on Instagram and Facebook. So we have all these outlooks. It is now officially the BOERBOEL Universe, hosted by Jordan P. We're going to outreach to everybody, so I'm going to shut your mouth, but you can catch us syndicated every single week again. Thursday, 7 p.m. Stay tuned for additional shows throughout the week. We know you have lives. We know you have work life. You have families, friends. So you can catch these shows. You don't have to catch them live. You can catch them later. But again, the BOERBOEL Universe is coming out.
Right, exactly, all encompassing. And these type of things apply. We call them universal principles, right? So much love, y'all. Much love. Thank you, everybody that came out. Any closing remarks? You got anything final? You want to summarize it for us today, David?
No, train your dogs. If you're getting a freaking power breed, you're getting a BOERBOEL, start training immediately. And if you do that, you'll be just fine.
Okay. And I like to say, feeding, measure, don't overfeed, be attentive, mindful of redirecting and blocking. We want to make sure that we establishing boundaries and nonverbal communication through leadership.
I like it. I'll also plug real quick. If you go on miraclecaninetraining.com and go to our blog, we have one we wrote last year that's all on do's and don'ts with raising puppies. So check that out. That'll give you some good pointers. And
what? Tell us one more time so I can write this down, because I'm definitely going to go watch.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to hit it up too.
Just go to miraclecaninetraining.com, so our website, and on our blog, there's a blog tab. You'll see it's like do's and don'ts on raising a puppy. So it's a good blog that the whole team put together, and it's got some good information in it. So
okay, all right. With that being said, we're gonna close it out. Appreciate everyone for joining, spending time with us. We appreciate your time. We value your time, so we're gonna make the most of it and give you everything that we got, week in and week out. This is what we do. Appreciate y'all for joining us. I hope that y'all picked up some really good information. And until next time, board buddies, stay active and stay busy. Make sure that you're doing the most. Hey, I'm gonna pound out. Salute. Hey, I'm gonna catch up with y'all next week. Hey, listen, make sure you stay tuned, because we got a lot of stuff coming through.
BOERBOEL unit.
No rush, go on, move dumb. Back and forth, push and shove. Make your peace and love turn to peace and gloves. Now you gotta do a run up. No rush, go on, move dumb.